everyone, welcome to the Game Dev London podcast, a community of game developers and enthusiasts talking about the one thing they love the most, games. My name is Nichola Humphreys, you can refer to me as she, her, and I'll be your host for today. And today we are joined by Chloe. Chloe, for those who don't know who you are, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi. I am Chloe Alford, and I am currently a junior game designer.
Nice. Before we get into the main topic of conversation today, I'm just going to throw a quick icebreaker question your way, just so then the audience can get to know you a little bit better and like it sort of calms the vibe down and like it has a nice little chill environment. So my question to you is, if you had to be part of any video game universe, which one would it be and why?
That is like such a hard question because there are so many games and universes. I think the one that always just immediately comes to mind, and we're going to ignore the fact that it's extremely dystopian because that's not the reason that I want to be in that world, but Cyberpunk 2077 always comes to me because it's like all of like the kind of cybernetic enhancements and like the brain dances and like you can like double jump because you got like new legs. It's just the whole like neon colors and everything, and the city just looks so good. It's yeah.
To be fair, that's such a great choice, because being a shorter individual myself, I could use the double jump sometimes. I just can never reach the top shelves of anything.
Yep. I know how you feel.
Plus, the aesthetic of Cyberpunk is like on point. It reminds me of Japan so much, and neon lights are the way to go.
yeah, it's incredible, especially if you have the HDR on and it's like all the light reflections and everything. It's amazing.
It's like IRL ray tracing.
Yes.
Cool. So yeah, that was a great choice. And then moving on to the topic of conversation today, we're going to talk all about studying video games, because Chloe and I have studied at the same university. We were in different years, but we studied the same course of game design, which was a very cool course. So if you're ever thinking about studying at University of Art London, would recommend. Ooh. Shout out. Just to dive a little bit deeper into that, I'm curious, Chloe, why did you want to study games?
Studying games wasn't like an immediate kind of choice for me. It wasn't like something that I was like, yeah, I want to do this and then I'll follow that path. Kind of just happened. I've played a lot of games. Like I've always played games. I played Crash Bandicoot on my grandpa's PlayStation, and then Nintendo DS with New Super Mario Bros. And then I finally got into like PC gaming when I was about 18. And I think that's kind of when the idea of like the internet and like having kind of being able to see everything going on in the world really opened up, because that's like my generation. I didn't really have much internet before then. To telling all the kids the internet wasn't always here. So I really got interested in like technology, and I wanted to kind of be a part of like the future of like where the world was going to, and also like how much creativity that includes. So I studied a year of computer science, and was planning on going down that route. And they had a game development module on it. So obviously it was a lot of like the programming side, but also some of the design side too. And I absolutely adored that module. It was just the best module on the course. And I ended up changing to a different university to the University of Arts in London. And I did game design there. So yeah, it was just kind of, I ended up loving this module and was like, I want to study this, like just on its own in a vacuum. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, to be fair, there's something nice about visually like putting design on paper, and like I don't know, it's that I feel like it's almost, I don't know, it's there's something about design and just like writing down the functions, say, oh, this is how this aspect's going to work, this is how this aspect's going to work, and just figuring out that that's how design is within games. There's something fascinating about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of it's really satisfying when you're like problem solving and like answering questions. And I think I had a conversation with someone recently actually about what is design and what is game design. Like we went really back. And it was, I kind of realized, or to me, it was just like answering a series of questions. And those questions can be like problems in themselves, or just like kind of something that you need to like give the user, or there's just like a million ways to kind of go about it. And I love that. Like, I just think it really allows for people who see the world or like learn in different ways, so like, you know, like visually or whatever, to get into this discipline, because there are just so many questions. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny the way you mentioned almost like visualizing, putting all these pieces together, because the way that I often describe it to people who might not know what design is when answering such a meta question, I almost like, oh, it's like getting loads of, like, you have 5 different puzzle pieces and you have to get the right puzzles and put them, puzzle pieces together and put them together to make this one unison image. So it's just a case of like, you are the designer of like picking up that piece and figuring out where it goes, and then each puzzle piece is like a department. So maybe it's like, oh, I need a bit of this code and I need a bit of this art, so then we could put this harmonious mechanic together and then give that to the player, which is the final image.
Yeah, that was really well said. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I try my best. But yeah, I was curious as well, because like everyone who goes to university has loads of different experiences and loads of different stories, some more chaotic than others. So I'm curious, how did you find the experience of studying at university, especially game development?
I really enjoyed it. I loved it. Yeah, I think it was a great time in my life. I think university is just really great for that kind of working out kind of who you are, like what you want to do, who you want to be. It opens so many doors for you. It gets you in touch with so many different people, like people on your course and off your course. It's really quite eye-opening, I found. So even just like specifically with game design, not just the studying, but just the whole kind of industry. Yeah, I had a lot of opportunities, so I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I feel like, going off of that, I feel that university almost strengthens that communication that you need as a game designer, because you are put into situations during university where you're meeting like quite a few different people from all walks of the earth, and it's learning how to communicate with those people, especially if you end up working with them on like a project or part of a module in a course, or even outside of the course as well. It's about like building up those communication skills that may not have come across if you didn't study uni, but I feel like uni definitely like is the catalyst to help develop that communication skill.
Yeah, definitely. Like I always say that like communication skills are probably the most important skills that I think anyone could have in probably just in the world, as well as when we are working on a game, we are working as a team. And usually if something goes wrong, it's because of a lack of communication or miscommunication. And so working on like communication skills is like always something that I always say to people, like actively work on it, because it is so important. And like you said, like I had friends from all different countries around the world, some people whose English wasn't perfect, and so I did have to improve my communication to make sure that we were, you know, on the right page. And so I think communication skills is definitely something that you learn specifically while you're studying, but also just like accidentally, because you are exposing yourself to so many different people, so many different ways of people speak, not just like accent or anything like that, or like level of language, but also just maybe people explaining themselves poorly and you're having to understand and dissect what they're saying, and then maybe relate that back to other people. but also, obviously you're presenting topics. You end up working as a team in I think multiple different projects, at least for me. So yeah, the communication levels, I think, for me, drastically improved through my university experience.
Oh yeah, and that makes total sense, and it almost like ties into networking as well. Like I know university can be very extreme when it comes to networking, where it's like, oh, well, just one drink ends up being like 20. But when it comes to like networking with professionals, I feel like it definitely like gives us good practice in the sense of like, oh, okay, so this is how we'd want to interact with professionals in a social environment, so that we could build out our network space.
Yeah, definitely. I think those networking skills are very important. And again, it's just communicating with people and like communicating to, in that case, sell yourself. Like, how can you bring yourself across to be the best version of yourself? How can you make yourself sound the best? And it's all communication. So yeah, very important.
But going off the whole like university experience, what do you feel are the pros and cons of studying at university?
So I'll say with pros, is you get a very structured learning path. Like you know what you're doing. You have your 3 or 4 years, depending on where you are. You know what you're studying on each of those years. You know kind of where you'll be at the end. And you don't really have to control much. You're just kind of shown the way. And so you have quite a weight, I think, lifted off of your shoulders when it's not your responsibility to know what to learn or to like find what to learn. You're kind of, you're given help, you're given guidance. And so I think in that way as well, you end up learning a lot of things that you wouldn't think to teach yourself, or maybe wouldn't even like find to learn in the first place. So like game design theory is extremely helpful and applicable. And I didn't realize how much that I would actually end up falling back on that in my work. Because you kind of think like, oh well, you just make games, or like you don't need this kind of fluffy extra stuff to kind of go underneath, but you really do. There's a reason that this game design theory exists, and that some amazing game designers know a lot of theory. So yeah, that's definitely one. I think you have a lot of access to really knowledgeable, skilled people. Like your tutors really know what they're talking about. They are there to help you like day and night whenever you need it. Or well, I mean, I studied in COVID, or part of I think 2 of my years were in COVID total. So like some of my tutors really were there like day and night. But yeah, they are there, which obviously if you don't have that, makes a massive difference. So yeah, if you're stuck on a programming question, you can just message your programming tutor and be like, help, and they're there, and it's so valuable.
It's just like the idea of just sending the word help and nothing else.
Just they're like, I got you. They know what's up as soon as they see that message.
Let me look.
Yeah. They probably have gotten that message many times. I wouldn't be surprised if they had just received help. You also get to work with other disciplines. So like I think for me we had two, maybe three opportunities to work with people from the animator course and the game art course. So yeah, like having that available was really, really cool, and I loved doing that, working with animator. I'm still friends with the animator that we worked with now. It was really cool. Yeah, and I think obviously just a lot of other pros that come with university in general, not even just maybe the thing that you're specifically studying, but you just get so much support and like university life. Like you get this whole community, and I always say that the friends that you make at university are the friends that you'll have for life. hopefully. um, but I generally think that, and I think it's really just a point for you to like grow. And there's so many like clubs and societies and events and everything that's going on that like you don't want to go into work immediately. Like I want to have my like 6-week summer holiday back, please. I miss that. It's like so it's just a really good time, and that was obviously all on top of everything to do with your course specific. There's a lot of pros. There's a lot of pros on my list. I could probably go into more if I could think of more.
To be fair, yeah, I totally agree with the statement that you mentioned, how like your university friends are going to be like your friends for life, because in secondary school it's very much like we're only really friends because we stay with each other every single day, and college is like that sort of rebellious phase, whereas I feel like, well, I say rebellious, it depends how rebellious you are of a person, but I feel like university is when like structure definitely gets taught to people, and if you're able to make friends while being professional as well as like having a laugh just on the side and like doing goofs, then I feel like those are the people that are going to really stick with you for life. Like I've got a few friends who are like international as well, and we all went to an event relating to the university, and we FaceTime each other to say like, hey, look at this cool course, like I know you couldn't be here because you're all the way in another country, but look how cool this is. And like it was almost like we were experiencing it together, again, despite being in like different time zones and different countries.
Yeah, I think game design like really allows for that, especially the like international students thing. Like I think all of my friends from my course are international. Yeah, all of them are. So they might be going home soon. Hopefully they stay. But obviously, because it's games and so much of that is online, it just means that you can stay friends for a really long time because you can just jump in Discord. So location really loses its meaning when it comes to video games, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, and thankfully as well, like designing for communities which bring people together, despite us being virtually or physically different, but virtually in the same room. We sort of like share that with the gamers who are then going to play the game that we're making, or the little like game jam thing that we're making. And I feel like, game design and games in general really thrive on communities being together in a virtual space despite being physically all across the world.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But with all the hundreds and thousands of pros of being at university, because like I could easily talk about how much fun university was and how valuable it is. I'm curious though, what do you feel like are the cons of studying at university?
So my list is going to be a lot shorter for cons, I think. My biggest con that I have actually with university isn't course specific, but it's that it can really cause a lot of mental fatigue because there's never a point in time for you to shut off. Like you can work 24 hours a day if you want to, and those kind of like 40 plus hours that you're expected to do from home, we can all be honest and say they never end up being in the healthy like 8-hour work day time. No, they all start at like 4 p.m. and then you finish at 2 a.m. And then on the weekend you'll work some more, and if you don't work you feel incredibly guilty. And because whenever any point you're having fun, you're like, I could be doing uni work right now, and that's just so unhealthy. And it's known to be unhealthy as well. Like it's not even a question. So it's just like that's one thing that I really do not like about university. But other than that, I would say that maybe it limits your learning to the structure of the course. Okay. But I think that would depend on the person, because I disagree with my own statement there, but I can see how some people might say that. So like, for example, you have the structure, what you're going to be learning, that is kind of it. And it can be on you to go out and find other resources, or if you want to delve deeper into a specific topic, you can do that. And this is where I disagree. You should do that, in my opinion. But I think for some people, they may not have that kind of self-motivation or discipline to go out and do that. So some things on the course they may not enjoy as much, or they may feel a little bit like limited to. But yeah, I don't really think I have any other cons necessarily.
No, those are good points to bring up, and it's interesting as well because like I feel like the external research that a student can do can almost like make the difference between like a good student and a great student, because it shows that you're willing to go like that extra mile, and that really does help when it comes to like applying for roles as well as like being in the industry as well, to say like, oh, I've done like X task, but I've also added like this little extra thing, because then it shows that you're like super motivated to be where you are, as well as like the work that you're working on. So doing that extra little step, it's almost like it's like the unwritten rule of all the different courses and all the different modules that you do, where it's like, here's the base, but feel free to add extra sprinkles onto the end, because it will definitely like help in what you're making right now.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's even just simple things like the one example I could think of is like adding audio to your game. Like we do not learn audio, we're not required to do audio, you're not marked on audio, but like I put audio in my games anyway because it makes them more enjoyable, a little bit more immersive. I wanted to know how to do it in the first place, so yeah, it's just like a little extra sprinkle of kind of why not, but also you want to explore what you're learning, what you're going to be doing. You want to like, I think that's a lot of the design sort of want, is like to find out how. You're like, oh, how can I do this? How can I implement this new mechanic? How do sound designers like add sound into games? Like, how can I build something myself? Yeah, so I completely agree. It's an unwritten rule that you should be really exploring it as much as you want.
And I feel like as well, having a look into how other departments might have input on a project is a great way for like designers and like game designers as well to know how different departments work, so then we can sort of add to that communication like we were mentioning earlier, on like how we can speak to each other, and like knowing the tools that we work with really really helps the communication flow, because we know what we're talking about, rather than like, oh, how do I add the beeps and the boops? And it's like, oh no, what you can do is actually use this tool, which is a plugin to this engine. And it's like, oh, okay, now this makes sense, rather than like saying like, I want the sounds, but I don't know what the sounds. I just want noise.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. It's like if I was having a conversation with a 3D modeler actually, and I was like, oh, can you like extrude this point more? It's because I had learned a little bit of 3D modeling on our course, and it was like, then you learn some of the words, the vocabulary of their profession, and obviously, like you said, it opens that door to communication. It makes it so much more easier. Again, I think that's one of the big things from our course specifically, because we do a lot of programming, that we have a lot of that programming knowledge, and it allows us to speak with programmers and so much more easily. Yeah.
I totally agree with that. And like, I feel that because of the things that we were taught during university, especially our course, like I can't speak for other courses, but I feel like especially for the course that we studied, it really helped us dive into like the potential avenues that we might want to go to if we didn't think game design was our future, but then also knowing how other departments work if we did decide to go to game design, which we both did. So woo. But yeah, I feel like having these opportunities really helped us thrive to become game designers. But I'm curious, do you think that learning this sort of stuff would have been as easy, or if not more difficult, if game design students wanted to not go to university, for example?
I think it depends massively on the person, for one. I think if you're extremely disciplined, extremely motivated, I mean, there are some, like, I think there's been the young BAFTA Designer Awards or something like that, and there's like 14-year-olds on there making games who have like, they're incredibly talented, and I don't think they are having any problems. I think they're going to be just fine learning without going to university. But I think you can get more pros out of going to university than you can self-studying. Like I think it's possible. I think gaming industry is completely possible to get into without a degree. But I do think it just makes it easier on university because all of those doors have already been set. They're already opened for you. You know, like the access to industry professionals through your tutors' connections, maybe, or through your showcase. That is already like a set event that's going to happen. You do not need to take it upon yourself to make this event or to get to an event. It's already there. You have zero effort other than make the game and be there on time. So it makes life a lot easier. Yeah, definitely.
I can almost picture it as if like university is the stabilizers you put onto a bike, where it's like you can just jump onto it and ride, but there's going to be a lot of obstacles, but you could get there eventually, and it can definitely be achievable. But with like the extra stabilizers being on there, it definitely allows for more of a smoother experience and definitely gives you the opportunities that you might not have been able to get doing self-taught. But not to say that you won't get those opportunities, they'll just be a lot harder to come by.
Yeah, that's hilarious because I've actually used the exact same metaphor, but I've said it's like the hand holders on the bus.
Oh, okay.
But like, you know, if you're stood in there, if you didn't have anything to hold on the bus, you'd be flying all over the place. So you get those little like dangly hand holder things that, you know, stop you from flying all over. Yeah.
Also, the great part about being a game designer, everything is like slightly philosophical, but it's always interesting where everyone's brain goes. It's like, I totally didn't think about that, but it works. But yeah, like going off of that, like we have like slightly creative brains, and like we are in the position that we are now, thankfully, thanks to our university course. And I would like to classify us as pretty good game design students. If I had to, you know, boast myself and like toot my own horn. But I'd be curious, what do you think makes for a good game design student?
I was wondering where you were going, so I was like, are you going to say good game designer? So I was like, whoa, that's way too early. As a student, I was like, oh, okay, yeah. I would say that too, I think. But what makes a good game design student? I mean, working really hard. That's always going to be one. You know, kind of. So when I started my degree, I knew that everything that I do in this degree is going to be what represents me when I'm trying to get a job in the industry. So I said, okay, well, I need to make sure that everything is as good as I can possibly make it, because I only want the best possible stuff to represent me. So right from the beginning, you know, I put my all into everything that I could. So I think, yeah, really, you know, hardworking, making sure that you're not procrastinating too much, you know, trying to make sure that you're, you know, as soon as you get an assignment, you're on it from the beginning. You're just, especially, I think on more design degrees, they seem to be more, it's not exam-based, it's assignment-based. And so you obviously have a lot more time to do your assignments, where obviously some people say, okay, well, you have a lot of time to wait and do nothing, but you have a lot of time to make it really amazing. So yeah, just I think kind of a fundamental hardworking idea, but also like the kind of, you know, when you said, oh, the difference between making a game designer student good or a great student, what makes a great student is kind of going above and beyond and researching other things or playing different types of games to learn from their mechanics, or reading design books. Like they recommend design books on our course. I read a couple of them, but I don't think it was common for people to actually kind of go out their way to access these unless we were told like specific chapters or something. Watching YouTube videos, dev diaries, just making your own games. Obviously, I think that was really big. I was researching about like, you know, what kind of can I do as a game designer to increase my portfolio when obviously making a whole game is really difficult. So it's just sort of simple things like designing new mechanics. I think taking making use of all of the resources that are there. So like looking at the career support, going to the events that the university recommend, or maybe they haven't even recommended. Like we got taken to EGX, and obviously they have the career center there, and so making use of that and getting to go with them. Yeah, that's the above and beyond steps.
I think it's good that you mentioned like making games in your own time as well, because like game jams, I feel like were one of the most iconic things that we worked on when I was at university as well. Because every time there was a game jam, it was like, all right, we're all gonna get our laptops, so we're gonna all sit in a room, unhealthily do it for like make the game for 48 hours, and then go back to our university work. And that was sort of like it was like a marathon of making a game, and it was really fun, and it was nice to see the end product, even if it was like a chaotic end product. So something that we can say like, oh, we made this within 48 hours and it's playable. Whether it's good is another question, but it's playable, and that's the important but just like having those external experiences and just saying like, just sitting down and say like, I think I'm going to do the GMTK game jam because one, it will help me practice my code and make me not think about the other university projects I'm working on, but it also just like gets a little bit more practice in. And like participating in those whenever you can is a great way. And with game jams becoming more and more popular as well within the game dev space, it really encourages people to participate more, because I know that live streamers such as Ludwig and CDog VA, they're hosting game jams now. So it's sort of normalizing game jams on different platforms such as YouTube and Twitch.
Yeah, I've seen them hosted by them. I think it's really cool. Game jams are incredible. Like they allow you to add stuff to your portfolio in a matter of like 3 days. And that's also something that's amazing to show like passion, as well as just be really fun. Yeah, game jams, like I think that was one really great thing and pro for our course specifically, and it's definitely something that I would say that I would look for in university courses if I was taking them into consideration is, do they take part in events and do they take part in game jams? So like our university took part in Global Game Jam every year. I took part in every single one because it was so fun. Sadly, the one was in COVID, so I was very much just on that one on my own, like, well, that's fine. But yeah, that they are so helpful and so surprising that they bring about a lot of skills that you wouldn't probably even think to learn at any other point. So like, for example, my COVID game jam learnt Photoshop. And yeah, so that was, I can now use Photoshop thanks to the game jam. Not very well, but but you just have to learn so much in such a short space of time that it really is like a kind of all or nothing. And so you have no choice but to get that information in your brain. So yeah, they're a great tool. Like I said, extra things on your portfolio, way to show passion, and yeah, just really fun.
It's almost like the opposite of it. Well, let's say not necessarily opposite, but it definitely gives you a different experience to university. In the sense that when you're given an assignment at uni, you usually get 6 months to do like a particular part of the course. Whereas so you're able to like manage things more freely. So it's like, oh, okay, I know I need to do the 3D modeling. I can do that after I do the programming, which should take about a week or so. But with game jams, time management is a whole different ballpark. So it's like, okay, we need character models, but it will take all 48 hours. Scrap it. We don't need them. They're just going to be cubes. So it's really interesting trying to like learn that sort of time management experiences in both ends of the spectrum, both 6 months and 2 days, or maybe a week. But it's still like a very, very short time span, and it's great to get that practice in.
Yeah, they can, if you do them as a group as well, it can be an amazing way of just, if you need to learn how to communicate, you will in these 7 days, because you have to. Again, it's just like a kind of all or nothing. If you don't, you'll fail. So you are forced into a position where you do have to learn. Yeah, this is definitely good for that. If you need to learn something, make a game that includes it and do it in a game jam, and yeah, you'll have that skill in like 3 days.
Yeah, like it was only until a couple game jams ago that I learned how to create 3D characters. And they looked very strange. But it's because of that I kind of know how to make 3D characters in projects. And like the last game jam I did, I was managed to like churn out a couple different variations of 3D models, like 3D characters, and I was like, oh cool, now I know how to do this. Whereas if I looked at myself doing my first ever game jam and I said, you're gonna make a 3D model of a character that moves, I think I would have just like cried in the corner and not participated.
Yeah. It's like, no.
It's like, oh, that's interesting. I don't believe you, and just walk out. But yeah, we talked about what makes a good game design student. So I'm curious, because we kind of mentioned a few notes on it beforehand, but I'm curious, what do you think makes a good game design course? Like, what do you think students should be looking for?
Well, yeah, definitely hosting events, like Global Game Jam, and also talks. Like our university did a lot of talks with different people in the industry, which obviously one is an opportunity for networking, but two really gets you to meet people who are going to be in the job that you are wanting to do. Which I always found that before I got to be a game designer, I was always asking the question, but what do you actually do? That was like the most common question. And obviously I figured it out basically when I got into the industry, like properly, like what does a game designer actually do? And I started working and I went and saw my younger brother and he was like, oh, okay, cool. But what do you actually do? And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, it's like full circle. But I can really understand why, because it's just, there is such like an open world of what you could actually be doing. But yeah, having those talks and meeting these people, and like you said, I think mentioned learning how different roles fit into this areas of a business is really, really helpful. So yeah, events, talks, things like that, always great. I think also matches like what you're looking for. So like for example, our degree did a lot of programming. People may not be doing that. The course may provide like art on the side or be more like technical, or so you really want to make sure that you're finding the right specific course, not necessarily like the best university. Yeah, I think it can help sometimes if your tutors were previously in the industry, because they'll obviously be able to provide you with a lot more information than maybe those who weren't. A lot of connections. I think good reviews, actually. I did not realize that university courses could have reviews, but they do, and I found them online, and I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, so it's always worth doing that. Yeah, I think having a lot of support, like having like one person that really does know their one skill set of like programming, and then one person that really does know like design theory, and being able to learn from them. I think just having really strong foundations for all the topics that you need to learn. So I know, not for my year, but I think now that they have someone who does narrative design, so she's very much teaches that, and she knows a lot about that. And so being able to go to any one of these kind of people and ask them a very specific question and being able to get that answer is obviously, that's what you're there for, right, is to learn. So making sure you have like a varied team to go to for anything that you need to learn.
Yeah, I think one thing as well that is always interesting when it comes to like looking for a game design course is the alumni that have come out of that game design course. So if, for example, someone studied at university and no one after graduating did anything, it's like, okay, maybe I shouldn't go here. But then like with our courses, for example, we have alumni that end up going to places like Rockstar, Ubisoft. I think a few people have gone to like Activision as well and like PlayStation Studios. So it's really just shut up. Whoa. Yeah, and it's just like just having a look at the alumni. So even like going on LinkedIn or finding like spaces in which the alumni are still part of, just to see where they are now, and like seeing how far students may potentially go as well.
Yeah, no, that can be really eye-opening. I think it says a lot, not just about like what the course taught you, but also about potentially the university as a whole and the support and guidance that you get. Because I think obviously a lot of the time, and what I was worried about was that like, okay, when I graduate, I'll kind of just be out in the open, like, oh God, okay, where do I go now? Kind of running around like a headless goose, with just zero structure to life anymore. But no, like, you know, we kept very much in touch with the head of our course. Our university emailed us with like career support and like events that you could go to help improve your like interviews on CVs and things like that. So it felt so like comforting, like you did have this kind of bed that you could fall into if needs be. So yeah, obviously, and on top of that, hopefully the course was really amazing and provided so many opportunities for having a great portfolio and being able to work with multidisciplines and yeah, you know, really getting to show off what you've learned. Yeah, speaks volumes, I think, if there's students on there that have done well.
Yeah, and like one thing as well to that I feel like our course did really well and has been doing a lot more in the more recent years when it comes to graduates is like displaying the work that the students have done, making that accessible all the time. So our course has an itch page in which they showcase all the different games that people have made for their final major projects, both for the BA and the MA. So like, this is the kind of work that you can expect to make for your final project. And if you want to check out the other students, if you want to get any ideas, maybe ask them questions, feel free to like jump into the game and like contact them further if you want to. And even if you don't want to play the game, there's like even like video reels of each game, so you can get like a general idea without having to like open every single one. There's a lot of courses, a lot of games that come out of every year. So yeah, it's always nice just to see what people have made, and even like when the new graduates come around, I'm always nosy and I always open the itch page to see like, ooh, what have people made this year, sort of thing. It's like a Christmas for game development.
Yeah. Yeah, you're like, oh, is this year as good? Like you hope that everyone's done well. Yeah, no, definitely. I think that was that kind of relates to what I said about the tutors having good like networks and having access to a lot of like industry people is also for the kind of showcase or what they do to kind of, you know, set you off. And as far as I'm aware, a lot of universities do like a third year showcase where they show like all of the games, but it's like it's not just showing off your games, it's also who do they bring to these events, you know, who are they getting in, whose eyes are they showing your game to, you know, what's the likelihood of people getting offered jobs at that event, for example. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense, and like it's always interesting as well seeing how much the showcase, because like we try our best to visit the showcase every year when it comes to our university, and just seeing how much more the showcase evolves with every year that comes. So with my year, we did our final course, but it was during COVID, so it was all digital and just like these little digital rooms that you could hop in and say like, oh, how's this game? And now the showcase had like an IRL event where it was like neon lights everywhere, and they had 2 different rooms, and I was like, wow, we've really like
champagne.
Yeah, champagne. And I was like, wow, this has like come very far. I'm very, very proud of my little course that I participated in.
Yeah. definitely.
So yeah, and it's always nice to see like game dev veterans as well also visiting the showcase to provide students with the opportunities to join the industry from that point onwards, really. So I'm curious, what is the most valuable information / advice that you got from studying at university?
It was definitely to just be myself, to be yourself, to put your personality into everything that you are doing, everything that you're working on, because that is what will truly make it unique, even if you don't think that you are necessarily unique. It's, you know, really coming from who you are. Like when someone plays your game, they get a feeling of who you are, a sense of who you are, like what your personality will be, who you are like to like work with. Are you kind of a funny person? Are you a friendly person? Are you kind of like a little bit more of like maybe like a book reader, like a little bit more detailed? It really gives away a lot about someone. And so yeah, really kind of putting yourself into everything that you do, almost like unapologetically, really really pays off. And I did that for everything. I did that for like my portfolio as well. I think that made it, I kind of just made it a bit goofy and funny, even though like everything online was saying, you know, like, oh, be very smart and professional. I had this advice saying no, because everyone's being smart and professional. If you're yourself, then you are unique, because everyone is unique. And so that's what I did. So I think that was definitely very very valuable.
Like I do remember like making a few ideas and like design choices, and our tutor questioning my design process and be like, why did you come to this conclusion? Because it's not what's the word, ordinary. So it's always interesting like finding that balance between like silly ideas and like being yourself, but then also like keeping it contained in this like structured way to be like, no, I will make it goofy, but I'll make it great.
Yeah, it's like communication. Like you need to show yourself, but also make sure that you're actually getting the point across that you're intending to, and it's not making it some weird, crazy, convoluted way of getting your point across. Yeah, definitely.
And I feel like it would always like I always enjoyed those like Uno reverse moments of our tutors questioning like design ideas and then like showing them. They'll be like, oh, why did you make this? And then showing them like the different design flows to be like, no, I will make it, and this is how I will make it. And they go, oh, well, never mind then.
You're like, no, I have a plan here, I promise. Yep, definitely. Yeah, you need a reason. There needs to be like was it method behind the madness?
A little chaotic spark to say like, but what if I did put a train in fire? It's like, what? Why?
Oh.
Virtually, not in real life, obviously.
Oh,
just
okay.
virtually, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Now I feel unsure.
I promise it will all be like a little toy train that you go for fire, and then it'd be a cool fire train that you could drive for ice mountains. It'd be cool.
It makes me think of the terrifying horror train that's like driving up behind the guy in that one game. And so that's your train, but now it's not just a horror train, it's now on fire as well.
Yeah, why not?
From that. It's taking Thomas the Tank Engine to like a whole new level.
Yeah, I would play that game. If Thomas the Tank Engine had flamethrowers, I think that'd be pretty cool.
Whoa.
It'd be a whole different perspective on the child's cartoons.
Oh. Anyway.
Going back to studying university. So we've covered most of the topic of like studying at uni itself. So I was curious when it comes to like outside resources, because we mentioned them a little bit earlier, but is there anything that you would recommend, like any resources that you would recommend to students who are thinking about studying game design or already in game design?
My immediate number one thought of when we think of resources outside of the like curriculum is Brackeys. I think everyone has used Brackeys, or at least knows of Brackeys in the industry. If you don't know, he is basically a guy that does YouTube videos, and he does tutorials on basic elements of game development, usually in Unity, as far as I'm aware. So yeah, he's incredible for he just really explains programming very well. And so if you're stuck or you just want to be able to quickly implement something, I used Breckies for all of my menus in all of my games. So yeah, he's definitely one resource. He doesn't make videos anymore, sadly, but all of his stuff is still there online, available to everyone. So yeah, he's incredible. Rest in peace, Breckies. He's still alive.
Yeah, I remember like there were so many instances where I was like, how do I make a menu? Because like even though it's something that you would think would be super easy to implement, it's like, oh wait, no, each of these need a button, and those buttons need code to actually tell the button what to do. And then I need to change the color of the button, and then I need to link what that button does once you've actually clicked it. And I was like, oh, there's so many actual big things that happen. And like Brecky's just sat down. It was almost like he was reading a book next to a fireplace, describing how you would then make this this UI menu. And I was like, oh, it makes so much sense to me now. Now that you've explained it in such like a tranquil way, I totally get it.
Yeah, he's very calming. Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the things with all games is that on face value, from like the user's perspective, it looks so basic, and it's just I just click a button, and you don't see the layers and layers of work that goes behind it. It's like, oh no, what I thought would take 5 minutes now takes an hour. That's a very common trend. So yeah, it's deceiving. But luckily Breckies is there to help you.
Yeah, I find like there's also going like on a similar route of like not knowing how much work actually goes into stuff. I feel like looking into GDC talks as well that are available on YouTube, because there's been ones of describing the enemy behavior behind the enemies in Spider-Man, and on face value it's just like, oh, they see Spider-Man, they get close. But in matter of fact, there's so many different layers to it, and not only is there like design of the enemies, but there's also design of the combat that needs to be included, and also enemy AI, and how many AI can think at the same time without the game like dropping to like 12 frames a second, because it does take up a load of memory when it comes to like loading everything all at once.
Yep. Yeah, no, GDC is an incredible resource. I didn't realize that not all of the videos are actually available on YouTube, but there is like I think GDC vaults where you can then go and access everything. But amazing talks on there. There are definitely some that I could recommend. I think my favorite one from kind of more of like a game design as an overview standpoint was definitely one by Curtis Murphy on what makes a great game great. Really enjoyable. If you're someone who like needs visuals or doesn't enjoy sitting in one place for a long time watching something, or that could maybe be seen as dull, he is really engaging and really enjoyable to watch, while also getting some really interesting like detailed information. So yeah, for looking at like the core of game design, really enjoyed his talk. Also one by Raf Costa. He wrote the book A Theory of Fun. Yes. And he did a talk called Practical Creativity. It's also really good, really enlightening. There's a lot more information in that because it's not kind of a fundamental overview. But yes, there's also some tips and things like that you can take from that talk to actually implement in your own practice as well. So that's a really good one. I could probably go on for more, but just go to GDC.
Well, I feel like there's also similar like parallels to that, where some talks you can get online, but there's some talks that are also locked away in a vault, or just like are more difficult to come by. And I feel like that definitely applies to Develop Brighton as well, where you can get most of the talks on YouTube, but there are definitely some talks which might not have been uploaded, but maybe you can catch them on like Twitch when they're live streaming, or maybe you have to actually be there in person to get the talk yourself. So that actually ties into my next question I have for you. Do you think there are any non-digital resources that you would recommend for students?
I actually had another resource, like
Oh, sorry,
digital
no,
resource.
go back.
Sorry,
Go
I
back
had
to the
one in my
digital
head.
ones.
So dev diaries or dev vlogs are really, really helpful and really insightful. So I watched a lot of, I think they're called dev diaries for Star Citizen. And not only are you learning, obviously, like kind of the skills and things that they're using, but also, again, like how the company, how all of the subsets of the business like working together to make something, and you really get to see like the background of what goes on into, you know, making a ship, for example, or making combat. Really, 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 really cool. So yeah, I think they do. I think they seem to do them for a lot of PC games now. Dev Diaries, I know, like I think Riot have done a few for different games, as well as obviously for smaller indie games. So yeah, definitely look out for those. But for non-digital,
Sorry.
non-digital is so difficult because everything is so easily accessible online. But I would say, I guess books. Books are non-digital, right? You can also get them in digital format, so I guess maybe not completely non-digital, but yeah, design books, really, really great. That Etheria Fun that I mentioned earlier, again, if you're not brilliant at sitting down and reading like non-fiction, that book is really, really brilliant, really engaging, while also giving some great information. So yes, definitely design books. There are a lot out there. That one in particular is one that I've been able to read from front to back without having to cherry pick the best bits. So that one I definitely rate highly. But also I would say playing tabletop games. So working with tabletop games more so now. They're a really, really clean way to see game mechanics and a really easy way for you to mess around and play with creativity in game mechanics. And this actually kind of goes into the Raf Costa talk about practical creativity. And again, also something that I was surprised that I would learn or have to learn of like how to be creative. And yeah, obviously, if you know, if you're staff studying or things like that, it's not something that would ever really come into your mind that creativity is necessarily something that can be learned. But again, it's that improving your creativity, and using tabletop games can really help you do that, and really experiment in such an easy format. So yeah, tabletop mechanics are so unique as well, and quite often not seen in PC games. So if you come from like PC or console or, you know, mobile, it really is like a whole new genre that opens a lot of doors, and it's non-digital, so I tick that box there.
No, yeah, I totally agree with you. And like, I feel like with physical board games that you can like pick up and play, it's like the best way that you could actually see paper designs in action.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier, like you said, to just like tweak mechanics in physical form, because it's like, oh, this way of spending mana didn't work. I'm just going to cross that out on a piece of paper and then write something new on this little card that I have. And it's so much easier to like expand upon current mechanics as well. So for example, I like to play Monopoly quite often, but I like to play it with d20s instead, and like some
Yeah.
of the numbers have rules, so it's like, oh, if you roll a 20 you can roll again, and it's just like skipping around the board. But then it's like, if you roll a 1, then you have to pay 50 quid into the bank. So it's a great way to just like instantly add mechanics without having to worry about like several different steps of adding audio and then like adding designs. Exactly. So it's a great way to just be like instant design and instant outcome.
Yeah, definitely. It's accessible to everyone, even if you have zero programming skills. I really found out the quality of this is like when I tried to make a tabletop game for Game Jam, and I was like, wow, I massively underestimated how hard this would be, because you don't realize how many doors open PC or digital games opens for you, because you can do everything. You are not limited really by anything, other than maybe your own ability. But yeah, for tabletop, it's just a whole new space, and just I think taking yourself away from the PC and putting yourself into a different medium yeah, it completely changes things. Yeah.
No, it makes that makes total sense. And even like with creating the board or a board game, you're only limited to things that are physically around you. But it's a great way to like visualize design and like show people visually how you'd want a specific mechanic to take place. And then you won't have to worry about art instantly. But it's a great way to quickly scribble a doodle, not dribble on the board. That would not work. Oh, unless it's part of a mechanic. You never know.
I was meant to do this.
Yes. Trust me, it's going to work. But yeah, I feel like it's a great way to just like do some scribbles to say like, okay, this is what I was thinking. And like you can instantly like get feedback from that. Whereas like with digital design, it might take a little bit while to get like feedback. And it can be, despite having so many resources digitally, it can be harder to portray a design or communicate something without physically being in the room, which I feel like building and designing board games definitely brings to the table. No pun intended.
Yeah, I was gonna say as well, like because my biggest problem that I have with tabletop games is how expensive they are. So for anyone who wants to try with tabletop games and have a go at being really creative and playing around with mechanics, make it yourself. Every board game company will hate me for this. And if you like the game, I recommend buying it because, you want to support them. But like, you can just make it like with paper. Like I've made a couple of games, board games that I couldn't afford. I just made them myself on like paper with like coloring pens. Yeah, that is how accessible it is to everyone. You don't even need to own the game.
I mean, it definitely like counts when it comes to games that are just cards rather than rather than boards. Like Cards Against Humanity.
That way as well. Yeah.
Like Cards Against Humanity, you don't even need any fancy art or UI. It's just like, oh, here's a question and here's an answer, and we'll just make our own deck. And then we'll have just as much fun using the same mechanics, but we've got different questions. Maybe we will change up the mechanics, but it's definitely on the same lines of like tweaking it, but making it your own and not having to go out and buy like a 50 quid box of cards or or just making it yourself, basically.
Yep.
And you mentioned before some different talks as well that are super useful when it comes to studying games. So I'm curious, is there any additional stuff like talks, panels, documents, or books that you'd recommend?
Those are my big ones. I think, I mean, if you're into level design, Steve Lee, I really enjoy his YouTube channel. He goes into a lot of kind of specifics on level design, so that's really interesting. Yeah, to be fair, like those GDC talks are the ones that I've really gotten into more recently and have found just that help game design as a whole. Like they really opened my eyes in a whole different way, even after my degree, and to kind of take my design in a specific like process or look at it in a different way. So I think, yeah, if people are going to take any resources from this, go have a look at those two GDC talks would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like to also plug the Game Dev London podcast, it's also you can also come check out this podcast as well, because it's a great way to showcase stories from industry veterans and learn about the stories of how people got into their role, as well as like what a specific department is. So for example, it was really enlightening for me to talk to Joshua about level design, just hearing about the different aspects that go into level design, as well as like the advice that he gave to aspiring level designers. Not to mention there's so many other episodes as well, but it's very interesting to just like sit down and listen to someone's story and just listen to what a level designer does and just like breaking it down for an audience member.
Yeah, I think one like resource, if you want to call it that, would be reaching out to people as well. I think there's never any reason to not. And I remembered a moment where I was going to get into game design, and I messaged Eric Barone, or Comsundape, the guy who made Stardew Valley, and just advice on getting into the industry. And he gave me a massive message back with tons of advice and things, and he was just incredibly helpful. And so I think, you know, it doesn't matter who the person is. If you want to, you know, find out some information, maybe they do have a talk and you can go and watch them, like on Game Dev London. Or, you know, if you really want to know about a specific person, just reach out and message them, because people have so much information and they may not even realize how much information they have, especially I think after you've finished, after you've graduated for so long. Obviously you kind of end up forgetting things that actually are really helpful, but you don't even really consider them anymore. So yeah, never worry to reach out to people and to ask them their recommendations on books and things like that.
Yeah, I feel like it can definitely be daunting as well for a student that's fresh out of uni to talk to industry veterans and say like, hey, how do I get into the games industry? When there's that massive barrier of, oh my goodness, I'm just talking to the narrative designer of The Witcher 3. Like, how do I mentally approach that? But it's all about just like breaking that down and be like, just another human being that is in the games industry. So they're probably so happy to just sit down and talk with someone, or just like just have a mini conversation with someone. So it's all about just like not worrying about the game dev pedestal that's people have or anything like that. It's just like they're just people in the games industry, and it's all good.
Yeah, the industry feels weirdly small because I think everyone is so willing to help each other and talk to each other about the profession, and you know, just about what games are coming out. Everyone shares this love for games. So yeah, it ends up making it feel like a real community, where people are just happy to help and chat, definitely.
Yeah, especially when there's like physical in-person networking events as well, where it really shows how, despite the games industry being massive, it really is like this small family that everyone kind of knows. Because you could go to one of these events and ask someone, hey, what's your advice on getting this? Someone may not have the advice, but they could physically point you to someone and say, hey, this person might know more about it. I've worked on them on XYZ project, or I worked on them for a couple of years, or I just know them. And
I randomly know multiple sound designers that I have only met once, but I've messaged them and they're really nice. So if you need any help with sound design, somehow I have this knowledge of people who exist.
Yeah, exactly. And like, yeah, even if you talk to one person, because we have like this almost close-knit family, it's so easy to like recommend you to someone that you may not have even thought about connecting with. So yeah, just reaching out to someone, no matter their position or no matter where they are, is a great piece of advice. So I totally agree with you on that.
The worst you're gonna get is a blank or left on red. And that's, what is that? It's nothing. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. It's similar to like applying for roles. It's like the worst that they could do is say no. It's not like they're going to arrest you for applying or scream in your face. It's just like the best outcome is that they reply. The worst outcome is that they don't, and that's not the end of the world.
Definitely.
I mean, if it happened to you in real life, then I feel like that would be a bit disheartening. Like if you said hello to someone and they just turned around and walked away. But that doesn't happen in game dev no networking events, or at least that I know of.
Yeah, just speak up. Make sure that they know you're there. If you are saying hi. But yeah, I don't think that's happened.
Yeah, and I'm sure it doesn't happen as well. And like even if one person doesn't hear exactly. Like I'm sure if one person doesn't hear you, I'm sure they'll tap someone else on the shoulder and say like, "Oh, this person was trying to speak to you, but I don't think you heard them." And it's such a wholesome community. So yeah, I don't think you could ever worry about being disheartened physically and even digitally as well. So we're all welcoming.
Definitely.
But yeah, I feel like we've pretty much covered everything. But if anyone has any additional questions, feel free to shout out, or not shout out, but reach out. Shout out if you want to. Reach out to myself or Chloe. Yeah, we'll definitely hear you. But yeah, where could people find you, Chloe?
So you can find me on Twitter at Chloe E. Elford, or on LinkedIn. And I will also be at Develop Brighton on Thursday. So I'm hoping to meet and chat with a lot of people then. So
nice.
Reach out, shout out if you see me.
Hi. I saw you on the podcast.
Hi.
It's right next to each other as well.
Like, whoa, no need to shout.
Nice. Just can't. I'm trying to get the picture of people shouting right next to each other out of my head, and I can't do it. But yeah, I've been your host today. My name is Nichola, and you can find me at Humphreys Media on pretty much most platforms. Thankfully, no one's stolen that name, so that's awesome. And yeah, thanks you to everyone who's been watching. Feel free to follow, like, and subscribe. Visit the gamedev.london website if you want to find out more and listen to other podcast episodes. And feel free to join the Discord as well at gamedev.london/join. A lot of words.
Thank you very, very much as well, Nichola, for having me.
Thank you so much for being on. And yeah, feel free to jump back on to the podcast whenever you like. I'm always happy for a chat. Yeah, that concludes another episode, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.